If you found an old item from a loved one that began acting strangely, would you investigate its mystery or leave the past alone? A low, persistent drizzle cast a misty veil over the small diner's worn wooden porch, the rain's soft percussion punctuated by the distant rumble of thunder escaping the heavy gray clouds above. Inside, the diner was a refuge from the chill, bathed in muted yellow light, where chatter and clink of dishes intertwined with the hiss of the old coffee machine. The air hung thick with the bittersweet smell of brewed coffee and stale cigarettes. Emily sat alone at a corner booth, her shoulders hunched beneath a cozy, slightly oversized gray sweater. The fabric swallowed her slender frame as if to shield her from the world's prying eyes. Her long brown hair, tied back in a practical ponytail, was damp from the rain outside, a few rebellious strands framing her faceair expression taut, eyes darting nervously beneath the foggy lens of her worn glasses. Her hands curled tightly around a chipped ceramic coffee mug, knuckles white against the cold porcelain. The words exchanged at the counter earlier still echoed, sour and sharp. "Back in town, running from your roots?" A voice sneered from the table behind her. Emily's instinct was to turn, confront, defend. Instead, she kept her gaze low, drawing a shaky breath as the men and women around the small wooden table smirked and exchanged knowing glances. "Crazy stories about your grandfather," another voice chimed, tinged with disdain. "Everyone knows that place is cursed." The room seemed to tilt, a subtle but unmistakable shift that slicked her skin with cold sweat. Faces blurred in her peripheral vision, some amused, others indifferent, none welcoming. Emily's throat tightened as an invisible weight settled across her chest. The past she'd tried to outrun pressed in, heavy and unyielding. An old man at the counter shot her a sidelong glance, his eyes shadowed with something like suspicion, or was it pity? Emily swallowed again, the bitter coffee now tasting sour, the warmth from the mug doing little to chase away the chill. Her fingers trembled slightly as she absently traced the rim of the mug, the rhythmic tapping a fragile anchor in the brewing storm inside her. Outside, the rain intensified, hollow slapbeats against the diner's roof mixing with the muted roar of distant thunder. The dim light through the rain-streaked windows painted the room in shades of gray and deep blue, a monochrome world where secrets lingered in the fog. Emily's heart hammered in sync with the simmering tension that thickened the room's atmosphere, the echo of whispered gossip like 1,000 unseen eyes dissecting her very existence. Her voice finally broke through the haze, quiet but firm, shattering the fragile silence between the murmurs. "I'm not running," she said, each word deliberate though tinged with vulnerability. "I'm here to face what I left behind." A brief pause, a breath held between distrust and disbelief. Her eyes met those of an elderly waitress, whose face bore lines carved by time and hardship, yet carried a flicker of gentle understanding beneath her guarded exterior. The waitress placed a fresh pot of coffee on Emily's table, her fingers brushing the edge lightly, an unspoken act of kindness that hung in the charged space. Emily's fingers curled around the new mug, the warmth seeping slowly into her palm, a small comfort, a fragile lifeline. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the diner's muted lighting casting long shadows that danced quietly as the storm outside eased. In that moment, Emily sat still, part outsider, part seeker, caught in the suspended breath of a town that both rejected and held its secrets close. The watch she'd found buried deep among her grandfather's things ticked faintly in her bag, an unyielding heartbeat tethering her to a past she could no longer ignore. Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the street lamps whole, and the first flicker of lightning traced a pale line across the dark sky. Emily's eyes, sharp yet haunted, fixed on the window beyond which lay unknown shadows, silent and waiting. Her journey had begun. The murmur of the diner's conversations faded into a distant hum as Emily sat alone in the corner booth, the weight of whispered judgments pressing down like the relentless drizzle outside. Her gaze wavered, settling on the worn tabletop stained faintly by years of spilled coffee and forgotten stories. She traced the grain absent-mindedly with a fingertip, the rhythm a fragile anchor amid the storm brewing inside her. Her breath caught, slow and deliberate, as memories flooded ghosts of a life she had tried to escape and now couldn't run from. The sneers and snide remarks from the other patrons echoed in her mind, each word a thudding rejection. Crazy stories they had said, mocking the tapestry of family myths her grandfather had woven, tales of time and shadows she once believed were mere eccentricities. The gray light filtering through the rain-specked windows cast a somber palette over the scene. Outside, the streets gleamed wet, reflecting distorted glows of flickering street lamps like fractured mirrors. The small town, familiar and suffocating, held its breath beneath heavy clouds, the air thick with unsaid things. Emily's hands shook slightly, the worn fabric of her oversized sweater offering little comfort. She tucked a strand of damp hair behind her ear, the motion mechanical but necessary in an attempt to steady herself against the rising tide of doubt. Maybe they're right, a dark thought whispered in the recesses of her mind, the seeds of self-doubt taking root. She had left to escape the shadows lurking in her family's past, but now those shadows seemed to stalk her at every corner, relentless and unforgiving. A faint sound from across the room, a chuckle, low and edged with derision, snapped her attention upright. Eyes flicked toward the table where a small group of locals exchanged knowing looks, their gazes lingering a moment too long, laden with unspoken scorn. Emily swallowed hard, an invisible barrier rising between her and the world. Her fists clenched beneath the table as a surge of suppressed anger flickered in her chest, quickly swallowed by the thick fog of shame. The waitress slid a cup of coffee toward her, the clink loud in the sudden stillness that settled. Emily's fingers wrapped around the warm mug, the heat seeping slowly into her cold hands, a small comfort amid the chill of rejection. She glanced down at her foggy glasses perched precariously on her nose, lenses blurred with the residue of rain and her own uncertainty. The world outside remained hazy, obscured by both weather and memory, mirroring the clouded vision of her path forward. A whispered murmur rose behind her, injurious and dismissive. "Runaway," one voice sneered, dragging the word out like a bitter curse. Others nodded, no one daring to defend her, their silence a verdict heavier than any accusation. Emily's heart pounded, fierce and raw, as the room seemed to close tighter around her. Yet beneath the crushing weight, a subtle ember glowed faintly, a flicker of defiance buried deep beneath layers of pain and fear. Her gaze hardened, and with deliberate calm, she lifted her eyes to the rain-streaked window. The woods beyond whispered secrets among the swaying branches, shadows shifting just beyond reach. Something in their silence called to her an invitation to unravel the threads that bound her past. In that sharp inhalation of cold air, a quiet shift occurred. The watch, tucked safely in her bag, ticked faintly, its almost imperceptible heartbeat a reminder that time, memory, and truth were intertwined in a dance she was both afraid and compelled to join. Emily exhaled slowly, a breath that carried away some of the weight but held onto the fragile spark of resolve. Outside, the rain softened to a gentle mist, blurring the harsh edges of the world and softening the light. And inside the diner, amid the muted hues and whispered judgments, Emily sat straightened, her eyes clear and shadowed with a growing determination. Her journey was no longer just a retreat from the past. It had become a search, silent, urgent, and necessary. The clock on the wall ticked, steady and unyielding, as the scene held its breath beneath the gray skies. And somewhere in the heavy quiet, the first murmur of a secret waiting to be uncovered stirred to life. The dim light of the diner seemed to shift as Emily rose from her seat, the low hum of conversations fading into a heavy silence that clung to her like a fog. Outside, the rain had eased to a gentle patter against the dirty windows, but inside, the atmosphere remained dense, weighted by unspoken judgments and whispered doubts she could almost feel pressing against her skin. She stepped outside beneath the canopy, the cool, damp air wrapping around her, mingling with the restless shadows of buildings huddled beneath the overcast sky. The rhythm of the rain matched the erratic beat of her heart, a pulse that was both scared and stubbornly defiant. The faded color of the street lamps cast the pavement in mottled pools of gray and blue, dissolving boundaries and blurring edges, folding the town into a twilight realm where past and present collided. Emily pulled her sweater tighter, the soft fabric comforting and familiar amid the chill. Her gaze lowered to the tangled bundle nestled in her bag, the old watch, cold and inert, yet suddenly alive with a faint, almost imperceptible ticking that seemed both impossible and irrefutable. It was a sound unexpected, fragile, a heartbeat hidden in the stillness. Her fingers brushed the watch's cracked glass face, the slight vibration beneath it a spark that pricked at the edges of her fear and curiosity. The watch that had never worked now whispered secrets in a language only half understood, tying her to memories she had long tried to bury. A gust of wind scattered fallen leaves across the slick street, their crisp rustle a sharp contrast to the steady tick of the watch. The fogged lenses of her glasses caught the reflection of something flickering in the distance, a shadow, blurred and fleeting at the edge of her vision. She blinked, the image vanishing like smoke, leaving only the echo of unease. Was she being watched? Or was the weight of the past simply drawing her deeper into its cold grip? The woods loomed beyond the town, dark and unknowable, a presence felt in the quiver of branches and the low sighs carried on the wind. They called to her, a silent reckoning that stirred beneath the surface, awakening buried fears and half-remembered dreams. The watch felt heavier now, as if tethered to something buried deep within that shadowed place. Emily's breath fogged the damp air as she stood motionless, the fading light catching the contours of her face, half-illumined, half-cloaked in shadow. Her eyes, sharp and searching, reflected an internal shift, a flicker of determination born from the collision of pain and hope. She clutched the watch tighter, the ticking growing steadier, a fragile heartbeat threading her to the relentless flow of time and memory. It was no longer just an object but a compass pointing toward truths hidden in the depths of the woods and the shadows of her bloodline. The first ripple of a decision formed, tentative but fierce. Emily swallowed her fear, stepping away from the fleeting safety of the streetlights and into the waiting gloom of the coming night. The rain slowed to a whisper, and as she moved forward, the woods seemed to lean closer, their secrets waiting patiently beneath the canopy of faded leaves. In the distance, a faint glow flickered the watch's subtle, cryptic guidance, a thread pulled taut between past and present. As darkness gathered, she inhaled deeply, the cold night air sharp in her lungs but electrifying with possibility. The journey beyond dismissal had begun. The distant ticking grew louder, echoing in sync with the slow, steady beat of her heartbeat, and Emily's footsteps faded into the shadows, leaving the quiet street behind, swallowed by the dancing veils of fog and the promise of revelation. Above, the evening star pierced the heavy sky, a solitary light in the deepening dark, a silent witness to the first step into the unknown. The rain had subsided to a light mist when Emily unlocked the heavy wooden door of her grandfather's house. The air inside was stale, carrying hints of dust and the sourness of long-closed rooms. She flipped the light switch, but the overhead bulb flickered weakly before settling into a dull glow that cast long shadows across the faded wallpaper and musty old furniture. Her fingers traced the carved edges of a dusty chair as she moved slowly through the entrance hall, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight. The house was a mausoleum of memories, each object a relic frozen in time. Old photographs lined the mantelpiece, faces blurred by age but alive with an echo of past laughter and pain. Emily's pulse quickened as she reached the small table where the old watch had lain when she first came here. She removed it carefully from her bag, the cold metal heavier than she remembered. To her surprise, the second hand ticked faintly, a slow heartbeat amidst the silence. It was the same watch that her grandfather insisted had never worked after she gave it to him decades ago. Determined now, Emily sat at the kitchen table, the grainy surface worn by years of use. She pulled out her grandfather's letters and diaries, yellowed pages filled with cramped handwriting, fragmented stories, and cryptic references. The rain started again outside, tapping softly against the window, a rhythmic reminder of the time slipping between her fingers. As she read, Snippets of her grandfather's past came into focus, a shadowed life tethered to strange legends and whispered secrets that had long been dismissed by the locals. Always the dreamer, one diary entry mused, hinting at his fascination with what lay beyond ordinary perception, time, memory, and perhaps forces unseen. Emily felt a small victory, a thread to grasp. Her fingers brushed against a loose piece of paper tucked between pages, a map, directions, perhaps a key to the hidden corners of his world. She folded it carefully, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and apprehension. A sudden knock at the door startled her, the sound sharp in the thick silence. Emily froze, her breath shallow. She rose slowly and opened it to find an old family friend, a man with kind eyes but a sober expression. "I thought you might need some help," he said quietly, stepping inside as the wind pitched brief gusts through the broken shutters. Together, they pored over the faded documents, sharing stories and filling gaps in the puzzle. His presence was a balm to her isolation, yet she sensed shadows lurking beneath his calm. As evening deepened, the strange ticking of the watch seemed to synchronize with the howls of wind filtering through the trees. Emily's eyes flicked toward the window where the dark outline of the woods loomed, a silhouette both familiar and fraught with unspoken fear. Her thoughts teetered between doubt and resolve. The watch was no longer a relic of a forgotten time, it was a key, a lure, a summons from the past she had to face. The old friend's voice broke the quiet. "There are stories the town doesn't talk about your grandfather, about those woods. Be careful what you dig up." Emily met his eyes, the flicker of determination steadily replacing her hesitation. "I have to know." Outside, the wind carried a low, eerie whistle through the branches, a hint of the unknown stirring in the shadows. The ticking watch pulsed faintly, a heartbeat in the growing darkness. Her journey into the depths of her grandfather's secret had truly begun. The fading light of late afternoon spilled through the cracked wooden shutters of her grandfather's house, painting long, trembling shadows across the worn floorboards. Emily sat cross-legged on the threadbare rug in the parlor, the old watch resting heavily in her palm. Its tick was faint, erratic, as though struggling against an unseen force. Every tick echoed like a pulse beneath the silence, fragile, yet insistent. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the brittle leaves of the ancient oak that stretched its skeletal branches over the roof. The storm approaching was a low growl in the distance, dark clouds rolling in like the weight of all that was hidden in this house. Emily's breath plumed before her, small and steady, yet trembling. The door creaked open gently, revealing Marcus, an old family friend whose presence was both a balm and a complication. His lined face was drawn, eyes shadowed but steady as he stepped inside. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he began, voice low, carrying the weight of things unsaid. Emily looked up, fingers tightening their grip on the watch. "I'm listening." Sitting beside her, Marcus hesitated before reaching into his coat pocket, pulling out a folded sheet of yellowed paper. "Your grandfather. He was involved in things the town wouldn't want to hear. It's not the stories they tell at the diner." Emily's pulse quickened, a mix of fear and resolve mingling in her chest. "What kind of things?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He pressed the paper into her hands. "This might help you understand. But be careful, Emily. The closer you get, the more dangerous it becomes." Some secrets. A sudden bang echoed from upstairs, silencing them both. Marcus's jaw tightened, eyes fixed toward the darkened staircase. "I told you, this house has a way of speaking when it wants to." With cautious steps, Emily rose and moved toward the stairs, every creak of the wood a reminder of the house's fragile integrity. The old photographs lining the hallway seemed to watch her passage, their faces pale and knowing. The warmth in the air thinned, replaced by a chill that bit deeper with every step. Upstairs, the master bedroom sprawled vast and shadowed. The window rattled in its frame, the storm's arrival unmistakable now. She pulled back heavy curtains to reveal bruised purple clouds and flashes of lightning that illuminated the room in jagged bursts. On the desk lay a small journal, tied with a faded blue ribbon, same hue that had come to symbolize the buried truths swirling around her. As Emily's fingers brushed against its leather cover, the watch in her pocket suddenly went silent. Time seemed to stop. The weight in her chest anchored her in place. Marcus's voice whispered behind her, tense and urgent. "Whatever is inside, it changes everything." Emily unfastened the ribbon and opened the journal, the pages fragile and filled with her grandfather's looping script. Her eyes skimmed the words, accounts of clandestine meetings, cryptic symbols, and references to a hidden place in the woods. A place marked not just on the map in the attic, but within the engravings on the watch's back. Her breath caught. The facets of the mystery she was beginning to unravel were more tangled and more dangerous than she had imagined. Suddenly, from the shadowed corner of the room, a movement caught her eye. Emily's pulse surged as she glimpsed the figure of a man watching from beyond the doorway, obscured by creeping darkness. She blinked and he was gone. The watch resumed its ticking as the storm broke outside, rain pelting the window in frantic drumming. Emily's heart pounded in rhythm with the tempest. She closed the journal, hands trembling but resolve firming. "I won't stop now," she said, voice steady even as the unknown pressed in from all sides. Marcus nodded solemnly. "Then prepare yourself. This is more than just family stories. It's a legacy that refuses to stay buried." Outside, the woods whispered secrets in the rising wind, their dark boundaries inviting and warning in equal measure. The path ahead was shadowed, uncertain. Emily stood at the threshold, caught between fear and fierce determination. The watch in her pocket ticked steadily once more, a beacon in the gathering storm, urging her forward into the unraveling mystery. The storm that had been gathering all day finally broke with a fierce crack of thunder, jolting Emily from her hurried search through the attic of her grandfather's old house. Rain battered the windows with relentless fury, blurring the world outside into a shifting haze. The air inside was thick with dust and secrets, mingling with the electric charge of the tempest beyond. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the worn journal she had found tucked beneath a loose floorboard. The leather cover was stained, the pages fragile with age, each word inked in sprawling, meticulous handwriting. The clock in the corner ticked unevenly, the sound hollow and urgent, as if echoing the tension swelling inside her. Page after page revealed a picture of a man ensnared in shadowed dealings, half-glimpsed rituals, whispered pact-making, and an obsession with time itself that had warped his final years. The watch glowing faintly in her pocket was no mere memento. It was a key-bound talisman, linking her to a dark legacy she had never imagined. Emily's breath hitched when she found an engraving in the journal that matched the delicate symbols on the watch's back, a cryptic coordinate pointing toward the dense woods at the edge of town, a place her grandfather had feared and revered in equal measure. Footsteps echoed suddenly behind her, sharp and deliberate. Spinning, she confronted Marcus' old family friend's face, a mask of regret and warning. "You shouldn't dig any deeper," Marcus muttered, his voice trembling slightly, betraying the weight of years spent bearing silent witness. Emily's gaze hardened, shadows flickering across her face in the intermittent lightning. "I need to know. Whatever it takes." His eyes darkened. "There are forces at play beyond your understanding, things that destroyed more than just his reputation." The words hung heavy between them like a shroud. Emily felt her resolve waver, the cold grip of fear clutching her heart. Yet beneath the fear was a fiery truth. She would not let the past consume her without answering its call. She clutched the watch tighter, the ticking now steady and defiant. Outside, the storm's rage crescendoed, the wails of wind mingling with the distant cries of animals stirred from their hiding. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow retreating into the storm-soaked woods beyond the broken window. The watch's ticking quickened, aligning with the heartbeat racing in her chest. Emily stepped toward the window, rain spattering against the glass in erratic bursts. "Who's there?" Her voice cracked but held a note of challenge. Only silence answered. The woods seemed to inhale, the darkness swallowing the scattered light. The watch's faint glow pulsed a steady rhythm, as if beckoning her to follow. Her heart slammed against her ribs, a wild mix of dread and determination. The past had broken loose its tether, and Emily's journey was spiraling into a realm where time, memory, and fear intertwined in a perilous dance. She closed the journal with a deliberate snap, the storm's fury a backdrop to her unyielding gaze. This was no longer a search for forgotten stories. It was a reckoning. The storm had come without mercy, swallowing the sky and setting the world awash in relentless sheets of rain. Emily stood alone beneath the choking canopy of ancient trees, the woods she had once viewed with a hesitant curiosity now transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and doubt. Her heavy sweater, soaked and clinging, felt like a second skin, cold and unyielding. Her breath created faint clouds in the sharp night air. The watch in her palm ticked faintly, its delicate heartbeat a fragile tether to a past unraveling with every step she took deeper into the unknown. The path beneath her feet was slick with mud, the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves rising in oppressive waves. A sharp gust of wind bent the branches overhead, rain slicing through the darkness like shards of glass. Emily's heart pounded in time with the storm's wild rhythm, a frantic cadence echoing the chaos unraveling within her. Tears blurred her vision, mingling with the rain as she clutched a photograph soaked and nestled protectively in her jacket pocket, a cherished image of her family, faces frozen in a happier, simpler moment now torn and stained. Her hands trembled as she drew the photograph free, but before she could press it to her chest, a sudden gust ripped it from her grasp, sending it spiraling into the relentless wind. Her cry was lost in the storm's howl, the image torn from her and vanished into the black tangle of the woods. Silence crashed over her in that instant, brutal and complete, as if the world itself had swallowed the light. Emily sank to her knees, the cold mud soaking into her skin through the thin fabric. Her vision swam with despair, every breath shallow, weighted by the loss of the past she'd thought she could reclaim. The ache wasn't just in her chest, it seeped through every fiber, unraveling the fragile threads holding her together. Around her, the trees loomed like silent sentinels, dark and unyielding, their branches clawing at the sky. The woods whispered in a language older than words, a haunting chant of forgotten sorrows and buried regrets. She raised her voice, raw and desperate, yelling into the void that closed endlessly around her. "I'm still here," her voice cracked and fragile. "I won't disappear." But the woods answered only with the rustling of leaves and the relentless driving rain. Emily's glasses slipped down her nose, fogging with the mixture of cold and tears. She pushed them back up, but the world remained blurred, the outlines of trees melting into shadow, the path forward vanishing in the storm's fury and her own crumbling resolve. Her knees pressed into the wet earth, grounding her even as her spirit wavered. The watch ticked, but its sound was drowned beneath the roar of the tempest and the pounding of her own fractured heart. She curled in on herself, the cold biting deep, skin slick with rain and sorrow, as the night folded around her like a shroud. The woods, once a place of childhood wonder and whispered tales, had become a vast darkness where hope flickered faintly, a fragile, trembling flame on the verge of extinction. Within the storm's relentless embrace, Emily felt herself slipping not just into the night, but into a descent from which there might be no return. The weight of secrets, betrayals, and the fracturing of her own identity pressed in, suffocating and absolute. Alone and unmoored, the land around her seemed to breathe its cold, ancient grief. The watch's ticking became an endless echo, fading into the vast, merciless dark. And in that crushing silence, Emily faced the unbearable truth that the past she sought to unearth might instead bury her whole. Night draped itself over the woods like a suffocating shroud, swallowing every trace of daylight and hope. Rain seeped relentlessly through the canopy, cold droplets clinging to Emily's skin, chilling her to the bone. She stood motionless, shivering, alone on the muddy path, her soaked sweater a thin barrier against the creeping numbness that clawed through her limbs. The world around her was a muted blur of grays and shadows, silence thick and heavy, pressing down with the weight of unseen eyes and unspoken fears. Her breath fogged and faltered, a ragged whisper in the vast void. Each heartbeat echoed like a hollow drum in the darkness, distant and fading. Emily's glasses, smeared and fogged from the cold and rain, offered her little clarity. She wiped them in vain, the wet smudges distorting the already fragmented world. Her vision, like her resolve, was clouded, blurred edges of reality and memory tangled in a nightmarish fog. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the old watch, its ticking irregular, faltering, as though struggling against the relentless dark engulfing her soul. The faint light the watch emitted flickered weakly, a ghostly beacon against the overwhelming black. She called out into the void, her voice fractured, brittle. "Is anyone there?" The question fell like a stone into an endless abyss, swallowed without a ripple. The woods did not answer, only the relentless tapping of rain on leaves and the occasional snap of a brittle twig beneath unseen footsteps. A sudden gust uprooted a stray branch, sending it crashing against a fallen log. Emily flinched, heart lurching in a spasmodic rhythm of fear and despair. The shadows around her shifted, playful and menacing, whispering forgotten secrets she could no longer decipher. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the sodden earth, rainwater mingling with tears she had long stopped denying. The photograph she had once cherished, now lost to the storm, felt like a wound raw and unforgiving. It had held fragments of joy and family now scattered beyond reach, much like the fragile pieces of her shattered certainty. The canopy above fractured with fleeting moonlight, casting skeletal branches that reached down like twisted fingers seeking to claim her. The cold seeped deeper, an unrelenting invasion, draining warmth, hope, the very essence of self. With a shuddering breath, Emily rested her forehead against the bark of an ancient oak, its roughness grounding her even as the despair threatened to consume. In the vast silence, broken only by the storm's mournful song, she felt the crushing solitude of a soul untethered, a broken compass adrift in uncharted darkness. Her voice found a whisper once more. "I don't know who I am anymore." No answer came, save for the cold night wind, which seemed to gather strength, curling around her like a final, encompassing embrace. Emily closed her eyes, surrendering to the void, the final precipice before the faintest stirrings of dawn could find her again. The rain had softened into a mist, a veil of silver that cloaked the woods in a fragile hush. Emily knelt beside the tangled roots of an ancient tree, her fingers cold and trembling as they brushed against the sodden earth. The photograph, lost moments before to the storm's fury, was gone somewhere in the endless dark tapestry of this unforgiving forest. Her breath was shallow, catching in the cold air, each exhale a visible ghost fading into the night. The watch in her hand ticked softly, a fragile heartbeat amid the vast silence, its faint glow barely piercing the gloom around her. Tears, long restrained, spilled free and mingled with the rain, tracing silent paths down her soaked cheeks. The weight of everything, loss, betrayal, fear pressed down, a suffocating shroud that seemed to settle in her bones. Yet beneath the crushing despair was a flicker, a fragile ember refusing to be extinguished. A sudden shaft of pale light flickered across the forest floor, subtle, unnatural. Emily's gaze lifted, drawn toward a faint, glowing thread weaving through the trees. The watch's light pulsed gently, illuminating a narrow path shrouded in mist and shadow. A memory stirred deep within her, gentle kindness in her grandfather's eyes, the soft laughter echoing from happier days, the courage that once had served as an unspoken promise. It was in this fragile beacon that she found something she thought lost, a reason to move forward. Emily rose slowly, the rain cooling the warmth of her skin, but not the fire rekindling within her chest. She stepped onto the faint path, her resolve delicate but present, each footfall a silent vow threading through the underbrush. The woods seemed to breathe around her, alive with the whispered secrets of unseen watchers. The old watch ticked steadily in her palm, its rhythmic pulse a compass pointing toward unseen truths, toward shadows waiting to be faced and understood. Her voice emerged then, a whisper swallowed beneath rustling leaves, yet unwavering, "I'm not lost." Not yet. A distant owl called a solitary, haunting note breaking the stillness and echoing through the tangled limbs above. It was a sound both ancient and timeless, a reminder that in the deepest darkness, light lingers still. Emily's heart steadied, a silent promise anchored her steps. Beyond the fog and beyond the fear lay a journey not just bound to the past, but carved by the courage to confront it, the fragile dawn before the storm's final unveiling. The woods, heavy with forgotten secrets and whispered shadows, held their breath as she moved forward, guided by the flickering light of the watch and the quiet strength awakening within her. And somewhere beyond the darkness, a new chapter stirred to life. The first light of dawn seeped through the half-open window, casting a warm amber glow over the cluttered desk where Emily sat. The storm had finally spent itself, leaving behind a heavy calm that whispered promises of renewal. Outside, the trees shivered gently in the breeze, their leaves glinting faintly with dew, as if awakening from a restless, dark night. Emily's eyes were tired but clear, reflecting a tentative spark of hope. The blue watch lay beside her on the weathered wooden table, its surface catching the early rays of sunlight. She reached out slowly, her fingertips brushing the cold metal, feeling the faint tremor most imperceptible like a heartbeat responding to her awakening. The room, once cloaked in shadows, now was tinged with soft golden hues. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, and the smell of rain and earth seeped in through the open window, grounding her in the present. Her shoulders, heavy and hunched for so long, began to straighten despite the ache and fatigue. Her gaze drifted to a worn photograph resting against the windowsill, a snapshot of her and her grandfather, smiling beneath a sunny sky. The image seemed distant, yet comforting, a silent reminder of resilience and love. She gently picked it up, her fingers tracing the frayed edges, memories flickering like fragile sparks of kindness, bravery, and the shadows they had endured. A soft, almost hesitant smile appeared on her face as she looked into her own reflection in the glass. The exhaustion was still there, but beneath it, a quiet strength stirred a glimpse of a woman willing to face what lay ahead. She reached for the old watch again, turning it over in her palm. The engravings, once cryptic, now seemed like a Mapan invitation to the truth she desperately sought. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing in the new morning air, feeling the warmth of the sunlight seep into her bones. The storm's fury had ignited a fire within that refused to be extinguished. For the first time in days, she was truly present, attentive to her own heartbeat, to the possibility that healing was within reach. In the corner, the shadows of the room appeared to retreat, replaced by a soft glow, as if dawn itself was washing away the darkness. Emily's fingers lingered on the watch, a fragile yet unwavering symbol of hope, of secrets buried but not forgotten. A quiet resolve formed, a whispering promise that she was not alone in this journey. The past might still cast long shadows, but she now understood that even in the deepest night, a glimmer of light persisted. The storm had passed, and with it, the first breath of a new beginning. And in that moment, the room held a fleeting but vivid sense of transformation, a fragile awakening that hinted change was possible, however tentative. The dawn stretched wide and warm, illuminating the room and her heart in the soft glow of hope. The forest had fallen silent, the storm clouds dispersing into wisps of gray as dawn crept over the horizon, spilling pale light through the tangled canopy. Emily, soaked and trembling but alive with a renewed surge of purpose, stepped cautiously forward, her gaze fixed on the faint glow at the end of the narrow trail illuminated by the watch's faint pulse. Her breath was uneven, each inhale sharp against the cold air, yet her stance was firm, a testament to the courage she now summoned. The woods seemed to hold their breath, the shadows retreating, making space for her resolve to pierce through the darkness. Her fingers tightened around the grip of the old watch, now pulsating with a steady rhythm, guiding her deeper into the uncharted territory of her grandfather's secrets. Deep in her mind, fragments of her grandfather's kindness burst into focus, stories of bravery, of facing fears long buried, of a man who dared to challenge the darkness in his own life. These memories fueled her steps, each one deliberate, carving her path through the labyrinth of twisted branches and flickering shadows. A sudden gust of wind rattled the leaves and snapped a brittle twig beneath her foot. She paused, heart pounding, eyes scanning the uncertain darkness ahead. The watch's glow intensified the faintest shimmer, drawing her. It was as if the silence was whispering, inviting her to see what had been hidden all along. "I won't turn back," she whispered, her voice a fragile declaration that echoed softly in the stillness. The trail opened into a small clearing, revealing a crumbling wooden structure partially concealed beneath foliage and moss. An old, weathered journal lying atop a stone, half buried in dirt. Emily's breath hitched as she knelt, the watch's light casting a pale halo over the scene. She reached out with trembling hands and carefully lifted the journal, its leather cover cracked and worn by time. Opening it revealed pages filled with her grandfather's shaky handwriting, confessions of fears long suppressed, courage in the face of darkness, and secrets that challenged everything she'd learned about her family. A shiver ran down her spine as she caught sight of a final, hidden pageant entry that spoke of a hidden truth, its coordinates engraved alongside a symbol identical to the one on her watch's back. Her finger lingered on the page, the enormity settling within her. The man she thought she knew was entangled in a web of mysteries, the depths of which she had only begun to fathom. A rustling in the bushes made her start, her senses sharpening. From the corner of her eye, a shadow at the forest's edge. But the shape dissolved into the morning light before she could focus. In silence, she rose, clutching the journal close, the watch's pulse steady in her pocket. The weight of the truth and her newfound purpose pressed into her, transforming fear into resolve. She inhaled slowly, the dawn's fresh air filling her lungs. The woods now seemed less menacing, more like the silent guardians of her grandfather's legacy. The mysterious force tethered to the watch was awakening, too, responding to her courage. Drawing the first breath of a new beginning, Emily stepped out of the shadows, ready for whatever darkness she must face next, trusting that her grandfather's bravery, her own resilience, and the truth they unveiled together would finally lead her into the light. The dawn was breaking through the dense canopy, spilling golden streaks across the haunting woods that had shadowed her journey. Emily stood at the threshold, the old journal clasped tightly in her trembling hands. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and awakening life, a paradoxical promise of renewal emerging from the darkness. The blue watch glinted faintly in the new light, its surface now smooth and unblemished, an emblem of justice and clarity, its engravings unclouded by shadows. Emily's eyes, once clouded with doubt and fear, now reflected a fierce resolve. Her shoulders, once bowed by grief, had straightened, unbowed by the weight of hidden truths. She took a deliberate step forward, her every move imbued with purpose. The woods seemed to pause, awaiting her next move, silent witnesses to her transformation. The storm had passed, the heavy clouds parted, revealing a sky painted in hues of hope and rebirth. Her voice broke the stillness, soft yet unwavering. "I am ready." A gentle wind stirred, swirling leaves into a pattern, an intricate dance of light and dark, embodying the victory of clarity over obscurity. The watch's faint pulse quickened as if echoing her heartbeat, steadfast and unbreakable. With a calm, purposeful stance, she stepped onto the faintest trail illuminated by the watch's mysterious glow. Every nerve, every inch of her being resonated with newfound strength, her past finally yielding to her unwavering will. She unscrewed the weathered journal's cover, revealing stories of bravery, struggle, and love, truths long repressed. As she read, her gaze deepened, absorbing the truth that her grandfather had fought for, a legacy of courage she now carried with her. A sense of poetic justice settled within her, a full circle of justice, truth, and love. The shadows lifted, replaced by a radiant light emanating from within, illuminating her path forward. The woods responded to her quiet bravery, a symphony of dawn's first light dancing through the leaves. The old watch in her hand stopped suddenly, its silent tick echoing the triumphant quiet of her soul. She turned and faced the woods one last time, the morning sun casting a warm glow across her face, the light spilling over her like a crown and unspoken acknowledgement of her rebirth. With steady steps, she ascended from the shadows, no longer a victim of fear but a guardian of truth, ready to forge the future from the lessons of the past. And in that quiet, cinematic moment, the woods stood still alive with stories waiting to be told, as the first rays of sunlight embraced her in a dawn of undeniable peace. The morning sunlight poured through the cracked window of Emily's modest home, casting a warm, golden hue across the faded walls. It was the kind of light that softened every shadow, promising a new beginning after the long, tumultuous night of revelations and rediscovery. Emily sat at the small wooden table, the old photograph of her and her grandfather cradled gently in her hands. The image captured a moment of joy, unburdened, pure, and now it felt sacred, a tangible link to the past she had finally come to understand. Her hands lingered on the photograph, fingertips tracing the gentle contours of their faces. The storm of her emotions had waned, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. The jagged edges of her grief and confusion had smoothed into a calm, reflective surface. She looked up, her eyes soft but steady, the battlefield of doubt and fear finally settled. The old watch, once a symbol of chaos and secrets, now lay silent on the sideboard, a relic of the journey that had tested her resolve. Its face was unlit, inscrutable, yet somehow tranquil, basking in the gentle glow of the morning. She reached out, her fingers brushing the smooth surface, feeling the weight of forgiveness and acceptance in that simple touch. A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, the fabric dancing softly as if whispering secrets only the heart could hear. Outside, the world was awakening, and new birds chirped, and the distant hum of life resumed its quiet melody. Emily took a deep, cleansing breath, savoring the clarity that had eluded her for so long. She rose slowly, her movements unhurried, embodying the grace of someone who had finally shed the heavy burden of her fears. The room, now bathed in morning light, seemed to breathe with her, every corner filled with tender echoes of her journey, pain, hope, and ultimately, peace. Walking to the window, she gazed out at the soft awakening of the small townhouses nestled in lush greenery, a sky painted in the blush of dawn. Her heart whispered a quiet prayer for what was lost and for the future she was ready to embrace. She knew she could no longer change the past, but she had forged a new path paved with understanding, forgiveness, and gentle acceptance. In that silent moment, as the room filled with the warm embrace of morning, Emily felt a profound connection to everything: her grandfather's legacy, her own resilience, and the unbreakable bonds that tethered her to the present. The world's chaos had given way to stillness, and in its place, a tender peace blossomed. Slowly, she reached out to place the photograph back on the wall, aligning it perfectly, a symbol of everything she had come to understand. As she turned away, her face tranquil but radiant, the camera lingered on the quiet, sunlit room, the light shimmering across the old watch, now completely still, a gentle testament to the end of a saga and the beginning of a new, peaceful chapter. The first rays of dawn spilled softly into Emily's modest room, gentle light dissolving the lingering shadows of the night. The old watch, silent now, rested beside a framed photograph of her and her grandfather, their smiles eternal in a frozen moment of peace. Emily sat quietly, her fingers resting on the photograph's glass, her gaze steady yet tender. The air was filled with a profound silence, broken only by her steady breathing and the distant hum of the waking world beyond the window. Her eyes reflected a luminous calm, an acceptance that had taken years to foster but now bloomed fully within her. The storm that had once threatened to drown her in chaos was gone, replaced by a quiet clarity. She reached out and gently picked up the watch, feeling the cold metal beneath her fingertips. Its surface, once etched with cryptic symbols and secrets, now shimmered in the morning light, a simple, unadorned relic of revelation and release. Her slow, deliberate movements conveyed a deep sense of reverence and relief. A slow smile formed on her lips as she recognized the truth. The legacy she had uncovered was not a cage but a key. The dark secrets, the shadows that had haunted her family and herself, had finally found their rightful place in the quiet past. Stepping back softly, Emily moved to the window to look out over the horizon. The town basked in the golden glow of sunrise, a gentle reminder that renewal often came quietly after storms had passed. She absorbed the warmth, both literal and metaphorical, and let it seep into her heart. In her hand, she clasped the photograph, pressing it close to her chest as tears of gratitude shimmered in her eyes. The room, bathed in morning serenity, reflected her inner transformation, a space of healing, of forgiving what was lost, and embracing what was found. The watch, now still, symbolized the end of her journey, an unspoken promise that the past shadows would no longer define her future. It was a moment of peaceful culmination, the symphony of reconciliation and newfound strength echoing softly in her soul. She turned from the window, her posture upright and her face luminous with a quiet, unshakable hope. The peace she had fought so desperately to attain now filled every corner of her being, casting a serene light that would illuminate her path forward. The camera slowly pulled back, capturing the gentle beauty of morning unfolding in her quiet sanctuary, the soft glow of dawn, the stillness of the rest of the world awakening, and Emily standing at the cusp of peace, fully embracing her rebirth. The earliest morning light seeped into the quiet room, casting a soft amber glow that wrapped around everything like a gentle embrace. The old watch, silent now, rested on the wooden table, its surface gleaming with the warmth of the sun's first rays. Next to it, a framed photograph of Emily and her grandfather sat quietly, their smiles timeless and serene. The room was still, bathed in a tranquil glow that suggested peace had finally settled over what once felt like a battlefield of secrets. Emily sat in her chair, her fingertips brushing the edges of the photograph, her eyes distant yet calm. Around her, the shadows of the night retreated, replaced by the quiet stillness of dawn. Every quiet breath she took was a testament to her journey and unspoken victory over fears long held, now gently laid to rest. In that moment, the storm in her heart had faded into a gentle lull, a lullaby of healing and resolution. The blue watch, now inert, symbolized the end of her voyage, the relentless march of time, secrets once hidden, now finally laid bare and understood. Its silent face reflected the purity of her newfound peace. She reached out, her fingers lightly tracing the contours of the watch, a silent appreciation for her strength and growth. Her eyes flickered with a quiet, luminous hope, recognizing that what she'd uncovered, truths buried deep, had given her clarity. The shadows of the past no longer loomed over her, replaced instead by the simple, profound beauty of acceptance. Outside, the world was awakening gently, the first light sparing the trees and rooftops with a delicate touch. Birdsong faintly stirred the stillness, a gentle chorus celebrating her victory not of conquest but of understanding, forgiveness, and release. Emily rose slowly, her posture unburdened, embodying a tranquility she hadn't known in years. She placed the photograph back gently on its place, aligning it perfectly, as if sealing a sacred pact. The room, bathed in warm morning light, reflected her inner transformation, a space of peace overwhelmingly present. The camera pulled back, capturing the slow, deliberate movement of her figure, calm, composed, whole. The fragile piece she had carved from chaos shimmered quietly in her eyes, a testament to the enduring power of truth, love, and letting go. The final shot lingered on the silent watch, now motionless, a symbol of the sacred silence that follows the storm, a silent witness to the journey, now peacefully at rest. The room was filled with an unspoken promise that whatever darkness had threatened to consume her, she had emerged reborn, peaceful in the glow of a new dawn. Have you ever felt the past creeping back in? Share your story below.